I was visited by a couple of apparitions this week. When we get to the most basic thing, I need to preface this. I have done stuff this week, but I did a lot of scrolling also. And that's what this story is about scrolling. So I had two spirits came to me during my stupor as I was just endlessly scrolling reels. One of them, I would like the audience's help in tracking down. So please contact me on social media if you know who this was. There was this reel came across my phone and it instantly died just after this rapper started his bars with "fine as fuck" and "I kill shit." He turns to camera, Luigi Mangione, and then carries on. And then my phone died, and I was like, "Oh my god, no!" I need to send that to everyone. I need to find out who this guy is. So if anyone knows what I'm talking about, please send that to me. But the other one was there's this classic clip of this Australian politician who's talking about gay marriage, and he goes like, "My 1,000 blossoms bloom as far as I'm concerned." This guy, and then he has like this demonic turn halfway through, and then he's like, "I'm not gonna waste any time on it because there's people being eaten by crocodiles," and like it's a very funny clip. And I never expected to see him again, but I saw him again. He's had a reel circulating around. It's not literally his; it's a clip of him in the news, and he it was a reel like they had us in the first half because he's saying like they've not released the statistics about this and it's like really bad, but I didn't want us to be compared to South Africa, but it's time to talk about the statistics about this. And I was like, oh, this is like an old fella talking about like being compared to South Africa. It's going to be really bad. And then he starts talking about like indigenous Australians having like almost half the life expectancy of white Australians. And I was like, yo, like this guy's actually being pretty based. Like, hell yeah.
Yeah. Bobcat is an interesting dude. He's pretty he's like reactionary on like most things, but he just has a weird thing where he's actually like quite good on in his area around the people that he is around. He's generally like the best on Aboriginal Australian kind of issues, in some ways, and others not so much.
Sure. We
That's the
don't
main thing
endorse
I'd heard.
Podcaster as a show, I guess. But
That's the main thing I'd heard about him. As soon as I've ever brought him up or brought that meme up, everyone from either Aotearoa or Australia has been like, yeah, he's an interesting character.
Yeah. He's kind of like, he's like someone like George Galloway or something like that, where you're like,
okay.
Like
I can see that. I can so see that. Like someone would be explaining to me like who is that British politician who like pretended to be a cat on Big Brother. I'd be like, oh, that's George Galloway. He's really weird. He's a weird guy. Yeah. So it's boiling hot here. We're in the peak of summer for me and Mule and the peak of winter for Tim. So Tim's freezing and we're boiling. I had to have my window open. I'm out of the stream of my big standard fan for the like only this part of the day and no other part. I have my window open and my neighbor is building a fence. So that's my disclaimer for my audio in advance. But welcome to Red Planet, everyone. How are you all doing?
Welcome.
Let's start the show like we usually do by asking Mule, what's the most base thing you did this week?
The most base thing that I did this week was go to the demonstration in solidarity with Palestine Action. We're going to talk about the main issue with this later on in the show. This is going to be the main segment, and we also have a guest who we're going to talk to, have an interview about the demonstration in London. But in Manchester, it was pretty good. I guess the only real update that I could say is that there were the standard streamers who are like vultures around left-wing protests. They turn up at trans rights protests in Manchester, they turn up at Palestine protests, and they just stand there with their cameras and yell slurs or terrorist, and they just did that a bit. So I did my part and walked in front of their cameras and just stood right in front of their cameras, smiled with a huge grin when they took pictures of me because I am not employed and they can't get me fired. So
you left your last job because of Palestine anyway. Like,
they're
gonna double fire you.
Like, what do they think they're gonna do? A bit of that, and like my partner was there to talk about her best friend who's in prison because she took action in relation to Palestine Action to stand up against genocide. Again, go to freeyulia.com and go to palestineaction.org. .uk or .org/prisoners. I can't remember. Go to Palestine Action UK and check out the prisoner part of the website. But yeah, no, it was good all round. The protest ended up marching all the way around to the other side of Manchester. So started in the main square, which most people mobilise in, St. Peter's Square, and marched all the way around, through Market Street, down, I think, Chapel Street. I'm pretty sure that's the route that they took, but we left the protest just earlier as we were feeling a little tired. So yeah, that was the most base thing that I did this week. What about Tim? Tim, what's the most base thing you did?
I was thinking about it, and probably just helping out a friend who is doing it rough at the moment. Yeah, can't really go too in depth on this, but
what Tim means is he retweeted a tweet of mine on Twitter because Elon Musk is.
I was there actually. I saw it. It was
his numbers were down.
Solidarity.
Those were rookie numbers. We got to get them up. Yeah. No, it was that was just one of my many good deeds for this week. That's
true.
Yeah, but what about Soph? What have you been up to?
Yeah, a few different things. First thing to get out of the way, I released my video finally about the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson. It's a really pretty video. People who haven't seen it already should absolutely check it out. I put a lot of my astrophotography into it, and I spent ages in Kerbal Space Program recreating stuff from the books because they've never been adapted to screen, so I kind of had to adapt them to screen a little bit myself. But actual based stuff outside of my work, I went down to this overdose prevention is a demo. Sorry, I need to clarify that demo overdose prevention site that the hub that I volunteer with, the harm reduction hub, set up along with the London Harm Reduction Collective. And the idea of this is that like having a tent where people can get needles and also like it acts as a needle exchange and also they can get harm reduction advice. All of this will lead to people having like doing safer drug use, as well as safer sex. We have condoms there as well. And this can reduce harm in the community more directly. The issue and the reason that it was a demo is that like we can't get licensed to have like a safer consumption site. Like this is so far outside the British politics, which is so conservative around drug use, like so intensely conservative. But I mean, most states are intensely conservative around drug use. So it was a demo of like that we can like benefit the community with a harm reduction approach. And it was a huge success. I meant to get out there way earlier. I want to like admit this. I really only showed up for like a little bit of hanging out and then helping to pack up. But I still helped to pack up. And we went around with like getting people to write on like I support harm reduction because for a big mural of reasons people like support harm reduction. And yeah, it felt really good to feel like it's been good feeling more and more connected into this project specifically because as like shit gets rougher and like the imperialist power structure is falling apart, like things are going to be rough and more rough and rougher still for people in the imperial core as our power over the world disappears and people who've been trying to ignore the fact that like their comfort and safety comes from exploiting people far away like are going to suddenly be in a lot of trouble. And so like yeah, I think that harm reduction organizing just like really speaks to me on that level as a really important practical thing. Hopefully we'll do an episode chatting about like the bigger picture of harm reduction in a few weeks time. But yeah, felt really good about it. I also had a hub shift this week. It was chill. And I want to give a shout out to my friend Joe, who has written in a few times, who is currently on a delegation from the London Renters Union off in Poland. They're doing the international like meetings of all the big tenants unions, and it's very cool. So shout out to Joe. Right. We want to know, speaking of people writing in, we want to know what based things you, the audience, have been doing. You can message us on social media, or you can send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns if that's cool with you, and we may shout it out in a later episode. Okay. On to the news. So I'm actually, for the news, gonna start off with something that's gonna link to our main segment. There is like context around this story that I'm going to cover now. We're interviewing someone on the specifics in a minute. I'll explain. Solidarity protests across the country take place as Palestine Action is on track to be prescribed as a terrorist group by the UK government. Last week, as we covered last week, Yvette Cooper announced she would be responding to the sabotage by Palestine Action activists at the RAF base Brize Norton by prescribing the group as an official terrorist organization, making it illegal to join or support them. There's been so much response to this. Like, if you were aware of Palestine Action at all, like, I mean, you might not even have known their name, but you've seen some of the footage of the stuff they do before this point. Like, you this week have probably seen people sharing "We Are All Palestine Action." There have been these huge emergency demos against it, against the prescription, to be clear. And we will be talking to someone later on in the show who was at a London demo about the way that the police responded to these protests. But yeah, you've seen probably "We Are All Palestine Action" being shared around. People have been including slogans like "What Israel is doing is terrorism, what Palestine Action doing is our duty." There's a lot of people highlighting the hypocrisy of trying to crack down on these activists as terrorists for spraying some red spray paint onto literally military vehicles that were going to, would carry equipment, weapons, troops, whatever to support an ongoing genocide. I think like it all boils down to like the class war is becoming incredibly naked for people right now, like just so clear, and like the contradictions of heightened so much with this, because like everyone is pointing at Israel and especially Israel's military as being an enemy of humanity right now. And the ruling class, the political establishment, is saying like, no, they're our buddies, because they are their buddies, like they're right about that. But they are used to just telling the working class what to think, and the working class going, yeah, hell yeah, I completely agree with that. Or at least, and I think that it's important to note this is how like media control really works, is if you tell everyone in a neighborhood, the majority of people in your neighborhood believe this thing, they will act in line with it and challenge the view less because they believe their neighbors believe it, right? And like this is why it's so important to go out and meet your neighbors, because like you can then actually find out that they don't believe like what the Sun or the Daily Mail is printing, right? So yeah, they're in shock that we're not going along with this. And as I said, we'll get into it later with our guest about the specifics of this London protest, but I just wanted to round up some Palestine protest-related news. Activists in Brussels from the group Stop Arming Israel Belgium staged a demonstration, clashed with police some. I believe there was some sabotage of property, but there's a great clip going around on Instagram of them really just doing what they want. There's great like group coordination with them. There's this like aesthetic emerging, and it's very reminiscent of David Graeber's era of direct action activism, like this aesthetic of the boiler suit, right? Like Palestine Action obviously have been in the red boiler suits quite famously, but way back in like the ultra-globalization movement and the counter-globalization movement, there was like people like kind of pioneering this look. And I know I'm just like analyzing it on the fashion level right now, but like it's interesting to see because it suggests a lineage, like it's people who have at the very least seen those activists from before. Yeah, they got great coordination as a group, and like the cops feel more like they are moving around this crowd of people to suggest a boundary and trying to almost like chase them to like be where they're going rather than containing them in one spot, which will be important when we talk about police tactics later. Next news, Maersk cuts ties with businesses in illegal Israeli settlements. This is a victory by Palestine, by various pressures in the Palestine solidarity movement. But yeah, Maersk, the shipping giant, has cut ties with businesses in illegal Israeli settlements. Probably one of the biggest stories we've seen this week is Kneecap and Bob Villain at Glastonbury. Tim, did this make it down to Aotearoa? Like the Glastonbury news?
I think it made it to literally everywhere in the world because it was amazing.
It's hard to gauge as like a festival that my friends went to when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And like some of them still go to or whatever. I'm like, is this but yeah, I think it's been a big deal. And so you probably already heard about it.
Yeah. It was huge just because it was like hilarious, like the whole thing about like swapping the feeds and stuff. But also there's a bunch of like Maori and Pacifica artists over there at the moment. A friend of mine is actually one of them, and I saw on a lot of their Instagram feeds, they were sharing it. So it's like definitely like a lot of indigenous people around the world are seeing this and being like, hell fucking yeah. So
Yeah. So Kneecap, as we've been covering previously, Irish rap group Kneecap have made an appearance in court after the British state has started to try to bring terrorism charges against them for displaying a Hezbollah flag at a previous gig, and expressing various anti-Zionist sentiments. There was a great like Mo Shara coming out for the first time publicly since the court appearance and saying the British state is used to picking on people that can get away with it. I think they really fucked up this time. Like, yeah, it's good to see. But so the BBC didn't air the feed of Kneecap, like wanted to silence them as much as possible and went with Bob Vylan instead, who led chants of death to the IDF, which like you could hear there was some trepidation from the crowd. Like they did the free Palestine and like huge Palestine, and then like, have you heard of this one? death to the IDF, and then like it wasn't like crickets, but like it was definitely a smaller one at first, and then they did it again, and it got way bigger.
Yeah, like I think the way in which it was presented by Bobby Vylan, everybody knows, everyone who likes Bob Vylan knows their vibe. They're a punk band, they're a punk hip hop band. They just make like proper good rebellious music, just like legit punk. And I think that the fact that the way that he went, right, have you heard this one though, and launched into it, like he didn't
Yeah.
he didn't hold back. He wasn't like death to the, he was like death to the IDF. Like, they knew straight away. It was like, yeah, this is right, this is the based opinion. Like, you can't, like, this is the popular public opinion, everybody knows it, artists know it, these are the fascists of our time, that's the end of it. And I think that's
exactly.
That's why it was so powerful, and that's why every Zionist is having a piss and poo party in their pants over it. Yeah.
So yeah, as I said, like it just boils down to this: it's class war. We all recognize the IDF as an enemy of humanity because they're committing a genocide right fucking now, and the BBC are making their complicity really obvious, as is the British state. So to finish my roundup, wrap this back up to the British state again. Yvette Cooper is now the name of a sabotage group in favor of Palestine, because some people, we don't know who, inspired by Palestine Action, certainly using Palestine Action's aesthetic and logo style, have formed a group called Yvette Cooper and sabotaged the London offices of BNY Mellon, who are big shareholders in the Israeli weapons industry. So yeah, they said on Instagram, Yvette Cooper will prescribe Palestine Action, but will she prescribe herself? We'll have to wait for next week to find out. So that was a couple of fun and funny bits. Mule, why don't you tell us about a pretty big win, actually?
Yeah, so this is the contentious thing. It is dividing hipster online brained communists who all they do is read theory and say this guy is not going to save us, and also the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They all uniquely hate this man, but everyone else has literally been able to see the bigger picture. Everyone who is normal has been able to see the bigger picture and see how good this is. This is Zoran Mamdani's New York City mayoral Democratic primary win. He is now going to be the Democratic candidate for the New York City mayoral race. It basically means he's going to win because the other contender is one of the worst Fallout looking motherfuckers you've ever seen in your, like a joke gang.
What's
that's
it to
in
you,
Fallout.
smooth skin?
Yeah, he literally looks like that. Like, look up this guy's name. I can't remember his name. His name's something like Cyril Sleewer or something. I can't remember his name. And he's
Cyril
literally
Sewer the ghoul.
Yeah, literally, and he's just out there. He did like a mad stunt where, people were talking about Eric Adams. There's too many rats in the city under Eric Adams, and so he like brought some cats and like stood outside his house, and he was like, "I'm gonna get these rats," and he like wears like a red beret, and he's like,
Oh, I looked up a picture of him now. Yeah, no, he looks like he's an NCR ranger. Yeah.
literally,
Curtis Slewa, yeah.
Yeah, so so basically that's why everyone is so mad that Zoran Mamdani is going to win, because the Republicans just absolutely could not field a candidate that is going to win against him. So obviously, I'll get into the details of it. So basically, he won on a campaign of social safety nets, such as raising the minimum wage to $30 an hour, city-owned grocery stores, free bus fares within the New York City 5 boroughs, a rent freeze, raised income taxes of 2% on those earning $1 million or more a year, and raising New York City's corporate tax rate to 11.5%, which matches that of New Jersey's. He not just won, he didn't just win the primary candidate race. He actually wiped the floor with the other candidates, including Andrew Cuomo. It's ridiculous that I'm saying that is some kind of surprise. I mean, I guess I'm surprised because he's an establishment politician, but
did you hear he conceded 90 minutes after polls closed? Like,
that's
it's
right.
that bad. That's serious.
Oh yeah. He gave Zoran a ring and was like, "Yeah, well done. This is your night." But I mean, maybe he might have said something different on the phone to him. But even Zoran himself literally was like, "Yeah, Cuomo was very gentlemanly and sportsmanly about it," which is surprising because he's a sex pest. But anyway, so he literally won despite constant smears in the primary debates, interviews and hit pieces, basically about his socialist policies and his sophisticated line on Israel and Palestinian liberation. He was winning 86% and 81% in some districts in Brooklyn and Queens, and even in more conservative areas like Staten Island and South Queens, Mamdani was winning substantial amounts of districts. And even in ones that he lost, he wasn't far behind Cuomo, which is why, he obviously conceded so early in. We got to think about Cuomo's, campaign. Was basically just like, I'm gonna suck billionaires' dicks, and I'm gonna like wash Netanyahu's back when he comes to New York City. You know what I mean? It's like, how could he possibly think he's gonna win? Other candidates also quickly realized that he was a much better opposition to Cuomo than they were, because everyone like universally just hates Andrew Cuomo. They endorsed his run, and there was one of the most like lovely co-endorsement campaigns I've ever seen with one of the other candidates, Brad Lander, who was a Jewish guy. He's got similar social safety net policies, a similar line on Israel. He endorsed Mamdani, and Mamdani endorsed him back in like an announcement video. It's actually like a really, really cute campaigin.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's really adorable, actually.
Yeah. And they went on Stephen Colbert together and all this stuff. So really, and it's just
I think they should kiss, just for the record.
They should.
This is the official show opinion. Red Planet believes they should kiss.
We're shipping. It's Mamander here on Red Planet. Despite Mamdani saying he would literally arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he would visit New York, he won an overwhelming amount of votes from Jewish New Yorkers, with the Jewish population in the 5 boroughs being approximately 1 million. Zoran also frequently met with Jewish community leaders and held town halls at synagogues across the city, proving yet again that Zionism does not represent the majority of Jews, even remotely. His sophisticated line on Israel, which personally I think is the farthest left that you could possibly get in US politics without being blocked from participation, like Rashida Tlaib has been, is that when he was asked, do you believe in Israel's right to exist? And he was asked this a lot on the campaign trail, which is insane, because it's like, what the fuck has Israel got to do with New York City? Actually, it's got nothing to do with it.
That's like the wild thing. It's like no one just wants to step back and go like, wait a minute, why does this keep, like why local elections, like why do we have to get these politicians, these local elections swearing fealty to a foreign state? It's like, why?
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's just super, super normal.
I want to definitely add in here that Mamdani is putting $65 million towards trans healthcare in New York City's budget if he
That's
wins.
wild.
And I just like I want to highlight this specifically because my girlfriend who is also trans like was like, okay, but how is he on trans rights? And I was like, oh, I don't actually know, because I was like being really excited about him being a socialist, and I thought it was an interesting like example of like how quickly you can be to like be like, oh, but he's going to be bad on something. Like there's going to be something that's going to let me down, like, or me personally, like the kind of marginalized person I am. And it's like, no, he just gets it. Like he gets it the whole,
Yeah.
yeah, entirely.
And I think that that is also reflected in his response to that question. Do you believe in Israel's right to exist? The response that he has constantly said is yes, as a state with equal rights, which is a fucking banger, because the only way that you could come back to that is by saying no. What do you mean I want an ethno state? That's the only like response that anyone would have to that. Like I disagree with that. I think that Israel should be a Jewish state for Jewish people, which it already is. In the Knesset in 2018 they signed a law to make it an ethno state. But of course that is leftists all over the world, not even in New York City, are being like, "Don't you see it? Don't you see it, bro? He's a Zionist. He's a Zion. He won't say death to Israel. He won't say murder every Israeli. He won't say Israel out of Palestine. Yeah, of course he won't, because if he did that, he would have been fucking destroyed in the debates. Are you an idiot? Are you a
Right. But
baby? Are
day
you a
but day
child?"
one in office, he better come out as Mayor Mamdani saying death, death to the IDF.
Yeah, hell yeah. But again,
Writing a
it
New
should.
York City bylaw that like there has to be a death to the IDF float in the like Macy's parade.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But yeah, it's also it's also really really interesting, because we should remember as well, like what these people are trying to say in reality is, oh, we shouldn't rely on electoral politics. Yes, absolutely, we shouldn't rely on electoral politics. We should be organizing alongside this and trying to build dual power structures. That's always been our picture on electoral politics. Electoral politics won't save us, but it is good to show the establishment ruling class that there are people who can win on campaigns that have social safety nets, and it's as simple as that. And the reason that everyone is so against him is because if he even comes close, remotely close, to enacting any of these policies, it will prove that actually all the fear mongering around them is nonsense. Like, for example, the wealth tax was raised in another state. I can't remember. I think it was Michigan, a couple of years ago or a couple of months ago, and all the millionaires were being like, "We're going to leave. No, that's it. There's going to be no more millionaires in Michigan." And literally, they didn't, because wow, when you make life better for the working class in an area, that actually, unfortunately, means that millionaires can continue to exploit him and make more money. But it also means that we are actually going to end up having a great amount of momentum built
Yeah.
towards socialist policies and social safety nets.
Because it'll either result in people being inspired and also running campaigns where they are socialists and they are just all around having policies that are just being good to people, or like or it will definitely do that whether those people succeed or not, but it will show people at the same time, as you said, like this stuff is just possible and completely doable, and we could just be actually sharing the wealth and like the incredible standard of living that the ruling class have access to. And like then the frustration builds, right? So that has a feedback effect onto like non-elect like politics outside of electoral politics, even if Mamdani is the only one ever.
Mm-hmm. So that is the Mamdani story. Tim, why don't you tell us about the aftermath of the ceasefire in Iran?
Yeah. So, yeah, Trump has like this video's come out of Trump just seemingly like totally switching um total pivot on his opinion on regime change in Iran, saying that yeah, he'd like to see everything calm down as quickly as possible, and that he thinks, what did he say, he's like, in Iran, they have some very smart people, some really good traders. I'm really sure that
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
figure this all out, um, which is kind of hilarious. Um, but also, at the same time, Iran is also Yeah, Iran is putting distance between itself and the IAEA. So yeah, which is like obviously the international body that kind of like keeps track of who is doing what with all their nuclear stuff. Um so after the US and Israel bombed its nuclear sites, Iran's Guardian Council approved a law to halt UN inspections, citing national sovereignty, which is like fair enough considering these inspection, like the people doing the inspecting, kind of like they're on the same side as the US and Israel, basically. Like they're like Israel is not letting anyone inspect their shit. Um, but yeah, so the IAEA has actually been accused of spying for Israel as well. So Tehran claims the agency leaked intel to Israel, which used it to target facilities. So they're saying that Israel said, okay, they have these facilities. These are the ones that I think it was so they've had enriched uranium for power reasons, and it takes a special kind of centrifuge and a couple months of work to get it up from like what is it like 60% all the way to 90% enriched, which is weapons grade. Um, and it's basically like that. The centrifuges are kind of key to it, but as far as anyone is aware, Iran doesn't have any of them. But I think the intelligence said if they were to house one or build one, this would be the facility that they would have it at, and that's what Israel tried to target or whatever. But it was unsuccessful anyway. But so yeah, Tehran have said that this is what they think Israel did. So IAEA denies this, but the inspections are now frozen anyway. So yeah, and Iran did move its enriched uranium before the attacks, putting it outside of the IAEA view, so outside of facilities that they have access to, and the officials, Iran state officials, say that they are rebuilding, but they still claim no plans for weapons whatsoever. So yeah, and I mean it's kind of this thing where when Israel is like not party to any of these agreements, and they are well known to have nukes and have been negotiating with them in the past and all this kind of stuff, and then Iran is kind of held to this different standard, even though Israel are the completely, Israel are the aggressors.
I got a tattoo earlier this week and I was on the way home from it and my taxi driver had LBC on, which is very like taxi driver radio to discuss
Yeah.
politics on. And they were talking about like Israel and Iran, and there's this awful like private school educated silver spoon fucker called Tom Swarbrook who was like talking about, doing all of the Zionist lines. Yeah, yeah, no,
Yeah.
Mule knows. And and I just like started mouthing off about it because like I like to just kind of like be loudly opinionated about this stuff, and like if people don't, if the person who I'm with, like if they're a stranger and they don't agree with me, they can just write it off as me being an annoying trans woman, but like often they will engage, right? And the driver said like, I'll tell you why Iran are stupid, I'll tell you why. And I was like, oh, okay, we're gonna have an argument. And then he was like, because look at North Korea. And I was like, oh my god, it's literally what Tim was saying last week. That like if they're just playing by the rules as much as possible, and America, the whole American imperialist machine treats them this shittily for playing by the rules, they might as well just have nukes. And now they're
Exactly.
doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. So they're claiming they're not, but they might be. Um, and honestly, like like it would be a smart move to do it. And I mean, maybe that's why Trump changed his tune as well. Who knows? But the possibility is definitely there. And yeah, it's just like North Korea have nukes allegedly, which is the only reason they haven't had like a direct regime change from America already. So, you know, uh, just take that as you will. Um, but yeah, so what's happening with the Dyke project?
Yeah, 100%. So this is just a little bit of like, it's been heating up. London's full of dikes. We've been having some dike activity going on. Um, the London Dyke March took place this week, which I'll give a shout out to. Just like I think that it's a cool kind of political block, in a very similar way to like Tim and I had this bonus episode talking about like sex workers and tattoo artists and the kind of subaltern culture that comes together from several different angles of like people's experiences of marginalization. And I think that dykes and like a lot of like the queer kink scene like often like blends into this stuff as well. And it's cool to see in Britain like activists who are identifying with like dyke as a political identity, because it challenges some like really like stiff British upper lip like kind of sensibilities that like everything needs to be like, you know, seemly and presentable. And like having a bunch of people with terrible haircuts, you know, the double mohawk, or like you know, and 10 trillion piercings, and like walking around with their tits out, like does a different kind of disruption to the British conservative than you know, direct sabotage does. But this has happened across America as well. I think it's mostly been this week, but because I think they've been coordinating, but there have been dyke marches in a bunch of major cities. I know there was also Pittsburgh, might have been last week. I have friends there who were like involved in the organizing of it. But the story here is actually about direct sabotage and interruption, because the Dyke Project, who we might remember from dropping the big banner off of Westminster Bridge after the Cash Review, interrupted a meeting of the TERF, a conference, the TERF group, the Lesbian Project. And I don't know which group started first, but it's such a funny and perfectly defining like difference that, you know, the TERF thing is like being, we have to protect like fragile, innocent lesbians. Mostly we mean white lesbians. And like the Dyke Project is just being like, yeah, fuck her off with that. So they a group of activists from the Dyke Project, I believe all cis, people can correct me if I'm wrong, wore costumes including sports gear and clown attire while shouting and using noisemakers such as bicycle horns to disrupt the event. They got chased around and grabbed at a bunch by some of these nasty turfs. It was such a like fantastic demonstration of how like, you know, the turfs are trying to do this like quiet organizing, which is very sinister because like they do end up achieving a lot, but they have these conferences where they're planning the best way to engage in institutional capture to legislate trans people out of existence. And just having like a bunch of dykes like burst in and start going like yelling shit and blowing like the football referee whistle and all this stuff.
Our friends at the ZAD would be proud.
Absolutely. It was very reminiscent actually of Circa, the clandestine insurgent rebel clown army, and the general wave of clown activism that was inspired by that. So yeah, this is just a story that's a shout out to the Dykes, because hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
But now it's time to go back to Tim again. The order of stories is that way around. So Tim, why don't you tell me about Panama?
Okay, Panama is interesting because Panama has bananas, yellow oil, some might say. No one has said that before. Maybe someone has said it, but I don't know. Here we go. So yeah, if you're familiar with the history of Panama,
I call it the curvy spice, and it must flow.
yeah, exactly. The curved melange. So so protests erupted 2 months ago in Panama's Boca del Toro, a major banana producing region. And they've intensified this past week, culminating in clashes with police that left one person dead and injured about 30 people, including several police officers, from a statement police said on Friday. So Panama's right-wing president, Jose Raul Molino, has blamed radical leftist groups and claims that they're not legitimate protesters, whatever that means. In the face of the disruption of order and acts of systematic violence, the state will enforce its constitutional mandate to guarantee peace, he said, which is really funny. Like, you know, in the face of systematic violence, the systematic violence machine must defend itself, you know. So he said, he declared a state of emergency. in response. So, the protesters, who are backed by unions and indigenous groups across the country, have faced off with authorities over a pension reform law that was passed in March. So the protesters are largely led by workers at a local Chiquita banana plantation. The multinational banana giant Chiquita called the workers' strike an unjustified abandonment of work and sacked thousands of employees. We covered this when this first happened in the news, Red Planet. So police said that vandals took over the local airport, stole vehicles belonging to car rental companies, and looted an office and a warehouse containing supplies belonging to Chiquita. Flights to the airport were still suspended on Friday. And beside the pension reforms, Panamaniacs have also been in the streets over a deal Molino struck with US President Donald Trump in April, allowing US troops to deploy to Panamanian bases along the Panama Canal. Molino made the concession to Trump after the US leader repeatedly threatened to take back the US built waterway. So basically, there is like an uprising of workers that you know that are feeling not so great about the pension reform and stuff. But in general, the attitude over there at the moment is that their president has kind of made them sit in the cuck chair while Trump just kind of does whatever he wants. Like having like the US troops deployed a lot through that area, as well as like the threat to like take back the waterway. Like, what does that mean, especially when you've already got like you're deploying troops along there. um it's obviously a trade route and everything like that. But yeah, so massive uprising. A state of emergency has been declared. Apparently, just so recently, the state of emergency was declared, um, and some of the workers were able to actually bargain. Like some of the protesting workers were able to bargain for some concessions and have pulled back on the actual kind of like the really serious protesting at the moment. But the state of emergency has still been said, like I think they say it's going to go for another 5 days or something like that. Which is, so they're a little bit kind of like, oh, okay, well, what else were you planning to do in this time? But yeah. So we'll see how that develops. Hopefully it results in a left-wing pushback and less US influence in the area. But we'll see what's happening over with your favorite Sir Kid Starver over in England, Mule.
Yeah, he's my favorite guy. We got Keir Starmer, who is facing a 120 MP revolt over his benefit cuts, welfare reform bill. So over 120 MPs have signed this letter in opposition to his vile welfare reforms, which could see thousands of disabled people lose their personal independence payments. That is an additional fund granted to disabled people, whether they work or not, that is awarded to cover the additional costs associated with living in society that doesn't accommodate them. This may be taxi fares for someone with chronic fatigue and pain to pick up shopping, or paying for a carer that provides specific care not provided by the NHS. True to fashion, Keith and his front bencher cronies have pushed the Labour Party further and further to the right by demanding more marginalised people be pushed to the margins and suffer. It is unconscionable that this bill even exists. Political pundits like me have been speculating that this bill is a new move to try and save money to put into the defence budget, which has recently been demanded by Trump for NATO countries to increase defence spending. The Emperor literally demanding that we get ready for a non-existent war, terrified as the Empire is clearly in decline. Under the pressure from the MP rebellion, Keir has watered down the bill, meaning that the drastic changes would only be applied to new claimants. But of course, that creates yet another two-tier system that Labour's signing off on, and the rebellion seems poised to continue to vote down the bill on Tuesday. This also means that Conservative support for the bill offered by opposition leader Kemi Badenoch is meaningless, as the conditions for that were to make the bill worse and not water it down in the face of the rebellion. This rebellion is also being seen amongst MPs as an unofficial vote of no confidence. So here's hoping that this sludge politics nightmare shit will bring about the end of the current leadership of the party.
I don't know. Like it feels like an election right now might get us reform. I'm genuinely my worry, but
Yeah, I mean, look, look. My hope is that reform gets in and the country falls apart because they don't know what they're doing, and the contradictions will continue to get more and more obvious. I think if reform ever get in. No,
all
to be
right.
clear, I don't
Mule's
want reform
locked
to
in
get
with
in.
accelerationism.
Yeah, no. I think it would be awful, obviously, but I mean, I think the thing is that this is the inevitable thing. It's going to happen in 5 years anyway. But I don't know. I think that at a time where the contradictions are starkly obvious, and also it's not even guaranteed that reform will win. The Greens have made gains against Labour. I think that the Greens could have, quite a decent shot at it, especially with the leadership challenge that's coming up soon, with Zach Polanski being a leadership hopeful. Anyway, we'll see. That's enough electoral politics for now. Sophie, tell us about other kinds of electoral politics, which proves that electoral politics are bad in the US.
Yeah, sure. So more bourgeois democracy for everyone. Strap in, yay! It's the U.S. Supreme Court. They've just ruled that Trump's executive orders can't be blocked by lower courts. Is the gist of it. I don't understand the U.S. court system perfectly, but in this case, which is about Trump trying to put through an executive order to rescind birthright citizenship, so make it so that ICE can deport people who have two non US citizen parents, but as someone who was born in the US, right? Someone who quite possibly has never lived anywhere else can be deported. Yeah, I mean, what do I say about this? This is the same logic that the Americans applied to indigenous Americans, American colonists. I'm trying to say applied to indigenous Americans, and the Nazis applied to Jews, right? Like you start doing like progressive generations back until you're like getting people like what is it, the one drop rule? This is where they're going with this shit. It's horrible. Um, the Supreme Court also this week ruled in favor of Tennessee's ban on trans healthcare for children. Just vile, horrible shit. I think I've talked at such length about how mad attacks on trans kids make me. This is more sickening shit from them. This is not going to stop people from transitioning. It's going to cause a bunch of suffering. There's going to be a bunch of kids who will probably kill themselves. As we know in the UK, they're like suppressing suicide statistics to try to claim that there is no improvement by trans healthcare, which is just not true. There are going to be a bunch of people who have to go through the wrong puberty. There are going to be a bunch of assigned female at birth people who have to have mastectomies because they've grown breasts when they didn't want to. Yeah, it's going to be a horrible time for a lot of people. And also, a lot of people are going to access this medication anyway. Like, they're just gonna, because people, care about their own life being the way they want it to be and having agency in the universe. So yeah, we'll see more of this as the next few weeks unfold, because the SCOTUS is going to be ruling on cases from sports to birth certificates. Things are going to get legally very, very, very bad for US trans people in the next few weeks. And I'm going to be making a video, a short one this time, out in the next few weeks about how we organize as trans people. It's called They Said on the TV You Aren't a Person Anymore. Stay tuned for it. Tim, why don't you tell us about Burkina Faso?
Cool. So, Burkina Faso has nationalized a bunch of mining assets, banned imports of secondhand textiles, as well as their neighbors Rwanda, who are doing the same, which is really interesting. So, on the 27th of August, 2024, Burkina Faso announced that it was going to start nationalizing two gold mines, Bongao and Wagnion, following a legal dispute between the London-listed Endeavour Mining and a local company called Lilium Mining. And then just recently, on the 11th of June, the government declared that the nationalization was complete. So the state-owned Burkina Faso Mining Participation Company, aka SOPAMIB, officially owns and controls the two mines now, as well as three mining licenses previously held by Endeavour and Lilium Mining. So the president, Ibrahim Traore, I think is how you say it. I don't know. I've never said it out loud,
Traore.
just read it a
Yep.
lot. Has expressed interest in revoking more foreign mining permits and granting the state greater control over the mining sector. So this is a huge thing. Like if you know anything about the concept of like neo-colonialism, these extractive industries are like a core part of that. So having these actual physical resources literally extracted from them for the profit of, you know, foreign business entities is like, yeah, that's kind of just how you know, like that's how a lot of the kind of modern neoliberal kind of like imperialism kind of operates, right? Like instead
Yeah.
of
I think we've
that.
talked about Endeavor Mining specifically on the show before. They
Mhm.
operate mines in Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, well, not no longer Burkina Faso and Senegal, right? So it's
Yeah.
literally like entirely a British organization, and all the money
Mhm.
is coming into Britain, and none of the mines are in Britain.
Yeah. So so yeah, so this is a great step, you know, first step. This is literally decolonization in action. So along with this, Traore's administration has also banned the import of secondhand textiles, something that has been copied by Rwanda, with the government there banning them, voicing a desire to bolster textile companies domestically. So this is like a huge thing, and it seems like a weird thing to do, but this is actually something that I've been reading about for years and years. It's a thing that happens a lot in the imperial periphery, where you get a lot of secondhand clothes and textiles from the West. Sometimes this goes through charity groups that handle it and all this kind of stuff, but they bundle up everything into these like big bundles of, you know, like old t-shirts and all this kind of stuff, and they send them out to the periphery in the guise of like, oh, it's like cheap clothes and all this kind of stuff, but this undermines local textile industries. So that's why, you know, you go to Southeast Asia and you'll see some kids wearing like the sickest like 80s Metallica t-shirts that you've ever fucking seen, because it's like all this shit gets sent out, and that means that there's no money to be made for people actually making their own garments there. So it undermines this huge industry, which you know, as a lot of people have rightly noticed, that a lot of textile industries are dominated by women workers. So it kind of like undermines this whole, you know, section of the workforce. But yeah, and so yeah, these moves away from imperialist exploitation are incredibly important, particularly for countries in Africa. And Traore himself, young socialist and anti-imperialist, echoing one of the most popular leaders of Burkina Faso, the legendary Thomas Sankara, who we all love, bringing in sweeping reforms like this, and also rejecting the French military, which we've reported on earlier, which we've reported on a bunch of times actually, has been great to see. And it's awesome to see that, you know, that Rwanda and other nations around are kind of following suit. So yeah, we'll keep up with that as it develops. But Mule, why don't you tell us a little bit about also in Africa, what's happening in Kenya?
Yeah, as Red Planet has said in the past, it's all eyes on Africa. Keep your eye on what is going on. It's going to be super important to see the throwing off of shackles of imperialism in the future. But this story is about that in a more people-powered way. Kenyans have risen up against the government in Nairobi, and 400 people have been injured and 17 killed in protests in Nairobi against the government. Even though the marches started peacefully, sources on the ground claim that undercover police officers attacked the crowds with whips and clubs, after which uniformed officers shot rubber bullets and tear gas into the crowd, which you can see if you're watching and not listening. If you're not, the crowd is huge, massive, and running away from a cloud of tear gas, with people actually jumping over fences of what look to be residential areas there in central Nairobi. So tens of thousands of Kenyans mobilized on Thursday this last week to echo last year's anti-government protests when President Ruto planned a tax hike that would severely harm the working class, after which some officers were charged with murdering protesters, and many more protesters of those protests were disappeared, which the police and private security forces were, of course, broadly proved to have been responsible for. The lightning rod for this latest mobilization was the killing of 31-year-old blogger and teacher Albert Ojwang, with 6 cops charged with his murder and contradictions of the state claiming to protect people becoming more and more obvious. The people of Kenya took to the streets in anger, marching towards State House. One protester, Lamumba Harmony, said to Reuters, quote, "We are fighting for the rights of our fellow youths and Kenyans and the people who died since June 25th. We want justice," end quote. The protest last year, which got close enough to a revolution for the protesters to break barriers which allowed them to get into parliament buildings, was so impactful that Kenya's international allies weighed in on the fear of a people-powered revolution. So we'll keep an eye on that. Hopefully we can do a bit more investigation into the organizing on the ground that has mobilized and helped to mobilize those protests in Kenya. But that's the end of the news segment. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, we are a show. If you value the work that we do, it relies on you. If you aren't already a patron, please go to patreon.com/red_planet and choose from one of the 4 tiers that we have for you. And also you can buy our merch at mercenarycreative.com. Go over and send us your money. But next up, we are going to be speaking to our guest to interview them regarding the demonstration on the ground in support of Palestine Action in Trafalgar Square on Monday. That was basically extremely violent on the side of the cops. We're going to be talking particularly about that and what the mood was on the ground and our guests' observations of that. And I believe we're going to see some footage of that happening.
Yeah, they're definitely planning something here. When are you going in to start arresting?
We're not at the moment.
No? Get the batons out, come on. Start battering them. Arrest, make some arrests. Yeah, here we go. Told ya. We've got...
So we're joined by Lavender, who's obviously anonymized for their personal preference and safety. Lavender, you were at this protest and saw some of this firsthand. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you saw happen and how it felt?
Hi, yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be here and speak to me about this. It's, I think it's really important that we actually spread the message of what happened as opposed to what we've seen reported. Of course, it was supposed to happen in Parliament, in the Parliament Square, right in front of Parliament, but that immediately got scuppered by the fact that they set up an exclusion zone, actually making it illegal for us to protest there. Forcing us to go to Trafalgar Square, which itself was mostly cordoned off, meaning we were forced into a small corner of Trafalgar Square near the National Gallery, where the police kept pushing and pushing us into a tighter and tighter space, putting us at huge risk of crowd crush. And it was genuinely quite alarming, like having the pigs breathing down our necks, stood behind us, just using their whole body weight just to push into us. And we were just trying to stand still, listen to the speeches, listen to the chants, just exist there. And from the second we got there, we were getting pushed, shoved about. It was just unpleasant. It was, well, I say gentle at first. In the grand scheme of things, it was gentle. But then for about 20 minutes, half an hour, small pushes, and then it just stopped. And then everything stopped for about 30 seconds, And then the clip you see just there happen, it was like that. They all just charged in apropos of nothing. We had done literally nothing to warrant it, charged into the crowd. They were specifically targeting one individual who was both queer and mixed, which is, I mean, disgusting, but also exactly what you'd expect for the institutionally bigoted in every single way imaginable Met Police. But anyway, they not only did they target that specific person, when they went in, it almost seemed like they were grabbing people at random, and whether or not they tried to arrest you or simply very violently just grabbed you and shoved you out of the way was a lottery.
Yeah.
It was genuinely scary because what happened to you and what the pigs did to you had no relation to anything that you had done or said to them or in their eyesight or whatever. It was just, yeah,
Random
like I say,
attacks.
random
As
attacks
I-
on us.
As I said to you before, I've experienced something quite similar to this at a Palestine protest a few months ago, where we were the tail end of the march, and we were going around this corner, and I spotted the cops getting together, like several units amassing together on the inside of the corner. The march was going around, and I said they're clearly about to do something. And just as I was saying it, they started shooting this like diagonal line across the corner of the road to like the opposite where they had a police line formed, right? And it was very clearly trying to like split off the crowd and engage in crowd control. But at the same time, they were exactly as you described, like very aggressively shoving, like shouting at people to get out of the way, like as if there was some emergency they were getting through towards. And all of this relies on like the crowd not having a bigger overview and being confused and like being accommodating to the police and not moving as a unit, because like I know someone who they arrested on that occasion actually, but like I wasn't there with them, we just happened to know each other, but they like it was very much random. And when we were talking about afterwards, we realized that a lot of the named orgs who were in that march were at the tail end, and so it was like an attempt to just grab some people and effectively decommission some like big time activists and organizers by giving them like warrants so they can't attend other protests. I don't know what kind of presence from like big orgs was there in the crowd. But in that footage, yeah, we just watched. It was a very, very similar maneuver. And in police maneuver tactics, like I think this is the one that gets called the crossbow, which is basically in the clip we just seen now, which is basically where there is a line of police holding the crowd, and there is a unit who's come in a line behind them and then shoots. Like it's called the crossbow because the one that's behind that line shoots past into the crowd, and starts grabbing people, start like shoving everyone. They're using the charge of assaulting an officer as their grounds to like grab people, right? So they go in being really aggressive, and then people respond, and then they get grabbed. I think, does that line up to what you saw? Because that's what I was seeing in the clip, and it was also like what I've experienced.
I mean, I'm not seeing the clip right now, and it's like you're describing what I'm seeing in my brain, in my mind's eye. It's almost exactly like that. They come in, commit significant violence against us, pushing us over. There was one person who was with his bike that just got ran through. You can see on the ground, the wheels on the ground. He's underneath his bike, cannot get up because the pigs are standing over him. A lot of that sort of thing happening. But I think you mentioned how organized these maneuvers are with the crossbow. That's why DRS training is so, so, so important. In that clip you saw, despite the absolute carnage that it looks like, one person from that charge got from that police charge got captured, and they weren't even arrested. They were searched and released afterwards. We de-arrested. Sorry, not we. Whoops.
Someone in the crowd.
Someone.
Yeah.
They were very cool. Anyway, someone, a group of people de-arrested. There were about 6 people inside of a circle of pigs. What they did, they charged in and created a circle. And what happened was the crowd swarmed around them, and many in the pro-Palestine group grabbed the people who were being encircled by the pigs, chanting, let them go, and shame on you, right up in the pigs' faces in response to their assault on us, their shouts at us, their pushing
That's fantastic.
on
That's
us.
great, great quick thinking to see that. So you're
Absolutely.
saying only one person was actually arrested and they were let go without charge in the end.
At that first police charge specifically, their pigs were in
Hmm.
there for about 10-15 minutes before they could get out. And the only reason we let them, the only reason the pro-Palestine support, I have to be careful.
It's good we've censored your identity in this.
Yeah, you're all
Yeah.
good.
But yeah, no, I think that is about the unit who's gone into the crowd, then getting like encircled themselves by the crowd. That's another like that
Absolutely.
is the fail state they are trying not to have happen, is that they lose their officers into the crowd like that. And so it's really like solid crowd formation tactics that your crowd pulled that off. I was
Absolutely.
gonna say you, but
Yeah, the crowd that was there, and ironically, one of the reason that they claimed to be pushing us so much in the first place was to keep us from getting onto the road. But in doing that charge into us, that allowed many of the crowd to swarm around. I say to wheel around and encircle the pigs who were encircling the protesters, and it left the road wide open, and that road was then shut down for the next 2.5 hours as a result of the pig's own actions attempting to prevent the road from being closed. And it is almost it is almost a perfect encapsulation of the idea that this police brutality does not work. We can overcome it, and we absolutely will.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think like there is a crucial thing there about just having confidence in dealing with police, and it comes from just repeated exposure that you just get used to the idea that like a lot of what they can do just comes from people going along with them. And when you realize like when enough people who have heard of de-arresting and have any exposure to training to how to do it at all, and some people who don't even have training, frankly, because it is at the end of the day just grabbing your comrade and pulling, like
Absolutely. I mean, every little helps.
yeah, when enough people are there together, like you people end up doing stuff that allows like the moral imperative of the crowd to override whatever like police legal justification would end up being in court at the end of the day. But it is also, I think, important to remember that, as I said earlier, they're trying to use bail conditions. They're trying to give people not charges, but just really, really long-term like court processes, and there'll be on bail conditions that say they can't be at any public gatherings, any protests the whole time, right? And it's a way of just like, if they think that someone is someone who's like in an org and a big deal activist, because this is how their brains work, right? It's all hierarchy based. So
Oh,
they think
absolutely.
they can grab a few activists who are the important ones and get them out of there, and then it will be like everyone will just go home because like Jerry isn't marching today. Mule, I think you had a question. I'm sorry for cutting you off before.
No, I was just gonna say, Lavender, how many people do you think were at the protest? Because I don't know if this is something that's being reported on widely.
Well, interesting. Should you mention that? I did make a note of The GB News claimed it was 200. Someone else, I believe it was the Express, I might well be wrong, they claimed it was 500. It was easily 1,000, easily over 1,000. Like there was no question of it. Yeah.
It's that beautiful imperial boomerang coming right back around, like in the same way that the Israeli media is always like, oh, we only lost 5 IDF soldiers in Gaza this week, when the reality it's 100. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, no, there's no way that many people support this terrorist organization, and on a very short notice, there obviously multiple organizations were able to mobilize 1,000 people, like you say. Speaking of organizations, what organizations did you see there? A lot of the time, I mean, obviously, it probably goes without saying that the SWP were there. However,
they were the first I noticed. Absolutely,
yeah, of course. What other organizations do you remember there?
There were a lot of local Palestine Solidarity Campaign. What would you call it? Chapters there, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
There were obviously PA. There was the RCP there as well. Generally speaking, a lot of left-wing organizations that, I mean, leftist infighting, it's a cliche. It's one of the biggest cliches you can get nowadays. But to see so many leftist organizations who historically do have large issues with each other uniting for this one cause, it was very powerful. It was mostly individuals, I must say. It was mostly individuals, but those groups that were there did absolutely show out in force, and much appreciated to all those groups who did show up.
Cool. And you did mention that the sort of repression tactics and the blocking off of certain areas continued for about 2 to 3 hours. How long would you say that the police violence continued for?
Well, because of the conditions that they placed on the exclusion zone, which we were not in, they forced it to wrap up by 3. At which time most people did vacate the road at the very least. But that police charge that you saw at the top of this segment, that happened at around 12:40, 12:50, and there was that level of police assaults on the protesters for the next 2.5 hours plus, like well after 3 o'clock, when many people did not leave when ordered to. When crowd control police came out, a lot of people still didn't leave, and the pigs were still pushing into what crowd was remaining. It was disgusting. And I should make a note, it wasn't just pushing, it wasn't just sort of charging in and walking through us. There's footage, I believe you, Neil, reviewed on your stream quite recently, of one officer closed fist punching an activist in the face. Although that one was caught on film, as far as I'm aware, that happened a lot more than was caught on film. I mean, it happened to me personally.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was missed. There was one officer who swung their arm closed fist at me, fortunately only made contact with my arm and not my face. But this sort of thing was very common. It was, yeah.
I have a friend who was arrested and who I did police station support for, and like the like night after, when she'd been released, and like I brought her back here and got her some like leftovers or whatever, but then we had to take pictures of her bruises, and it was just like she'd got so beat up by the cops that like you couldn't deny, like the only 2 possibilities were that the cops were intentionally like attacking her and trying to kick the fuck out of her, or that they are just unbelievably clumsy in their approach to like, just like cartoonishly like buffoonish in their approach to trying to like do crowd control of public order. And we know it's the former, obviously. But like when I was there at the police station spot, like one of the other arrestees who came out like had this like I'm not sure if she had a black eye, but she'd been punched in the face a bunch. And it was just like, it was just so obvious that like there will never be any kind of reconciliation or like accountability for the police doing this stuff because it's so hard to land a charge against the
Oh,
Met
of course not, because they just claim it's in their line
only
of
if they've
duty.
like permanently disabled you or something. Exactly, but it's just like it actually shouldn't, if the police exist at all, be normal for the police to go around just like punching trans women in the face. Like, what the fuck is this?
Mm. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we could do, you know, and obviously this is why we're so appreciative that you came on to speak about this, Lavender, is sort of use this to highlight just, you know, how the British police operates as state thugs. You know, this is not something that is limited to, you know, you might get detractors saying things like, oh, well, you know, this is a statement in support of an organization that's going to be prescribed as terrorists, so that's why they were on edge, they were jumpy. No, they do this at every protest. Like Sophie, I'm pretty sure the one that you went to was nothing to do. It was nowhere near as close as you know, Palestine Action being potentially prescribed as this recent one.
The one I was
And also,
describing earlier, yeah, was just a protest again, just a
yeah,
demo to show how many people are against the genocide in Gaza.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And, you know, I have been on counter demonstrations as an anti fascist where I have had to get in front of a comrade who was getting groped by the police as they were pushing her. You know, I've seen comrades get hit. You know, it's just something that happens all the time. And those tactics that you talked about are, again, more and more confirmation that this is exactly how the police state operates. It's exactly how the police operate. You know, they are taught to operate like this. Like Sophie described, there are you know, there are maneuvers that have names that they, you know, they go over when they know that there's a demonstration going to happen. They sit in a little fucking sweaty room together and they go, right, we're going to do this. We're going to do the crossbow maneuver. That's what we'll get him. We'll kettle him and then we'll do the crossbow. And they all go, yeah. You know, these little sick fucks. But yeah, I think it's a really good way to highlight that. I'm just thinking about more stuff regarding the demonstration on Monday. And were there any? I don't know if you saw any counter protesters there.
Well, there's an interesting story about this actually. There were a handful of counter protesters, but again, not to sound like a mainstream media conspiracy theorist, but if you looked at mainstream media, all you'd see was this one interview from this one fucking lying Zionist who, honest to God, turned up in a MAGA hat and a fucking t-shirt that said Zionist on it. He came.
Wait, is that Luke Akehurst?
I'm not sure about the name. My apologies.
But... No, he's a well-known Zionist MP for the Labour Party. Sorry.
Oh, right.
A bit of a shit joke.
Apologies. Sorry. I don't. I mean, I should be more in tune with electoral politics, but I am feeling quite disillusioned with it lately.
No,
it's fine.
No.
Fair enough.
But anyway, all that is to say, I've seen quite a lot of quotes from this interview that this particular individual gave with The Guardian, where not The Guardian, The Telegraph, same difference these days anyway, with The Telegraph claiming that they simply came up to peacefully demonstrate that Israel were cool and good and whatnot, and tried to claim that
the activists did 10,000 9/11s to them. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a classic story. We all know it. They did.
Claiming, I think the funniest claim for me though was the idea that there was a two-tier system of policing in favor of the pro-Palestine protest. Now, what actually yeah, I know, it's absurd. What actually happened was this: the Zionists, two of them in particular, came and started assaulting the pro-Palestinian protesters, pushing, shoving, getting right up in people's faces, screaming, and were themselves protected by the pigs. Now, there was a bus that had been prevented from going down the road because the pro-Palestinian protesters had blocked the road. That bus was pretty much empty at this point, and the pigs commandeered it and essentially used it as a forward base and led the Zionists in there for their own protection, essentially, to stop them from going further into the crowd and inevitably provoking the pro-Palestine protesters to defend themselves against such vile, vile stuff. Attacking us for being against genocide, just disgusting. And that was framed in articles as them allowing pro-Palestine activists to commit crimes whilst allowing pro-Palestine activists to, quote, commit crimes whilst forcing the Zionist into a bus, forcing them into a bus.
Oh, how I wish that was true.
A 12.5-ton safety capsule. That's definitely, violence against you, mate. Fuck off.
Yeah, I remember a counter demo I was in against Kelly J. Keane. I've been to a few of them, where this guy who I think is some far right streamer. Like I mean I know that he is. I've never seen any of his stuff because who honestly, like, who cares? But he was like getting right up in the business of like a bunch of quite young trans people who are very early in their transition. And it's very obvious, like, in doing this, that the move is always to create a sort of like 2-minute hate, like, aren't trans people disgusting? Look at all these people who, like, look like awkward in teenage, like, go figure, buddy, like, we're going through a second puberty, right? And like it's all to create like this really horrible content that's like based in disgust and hatred, and sometimes leads to like serious harassment campaigns against trans people, which is no joke. Like, it's just a horrible thing to experience. And so I was like blocking them off and getting in the way of his camera because I knew this is what he's trying to do, and I don't mind being on camera because I'm already on camera for my job, right? And he shoved me, like, put his hand on my chest and shoved me hard. And the cops came over to like protect him immediately from all of us. And I was like, and I like this cop who, I can't remember the name right now of the kind of officer who films protests, but it was the guy who has like the camera on the pole. Yeah, the word is prick. And he was saying, like, why are you attacking him? I was like, you just saw him shove me. It'll be on your fucking camera. And he's like, why were you like getting in front of him? And I was like, because he's trying to film everyone. And this perfect moment of clarity where I said of this fascist, like, he's trying to film everyone, and then we all understand what the implication is here, and the way in which he's trying to like single out trans people to make their lives hell and turn their lives into like cringe content for the worst, like, basement dwelling losers. And we all understand that, and the cop understands that just fine. And the cop gestures to his camera and goes, well, I'm filming you. And it's just like, yeah, man, you are the same thing. That's right. Like, of course.
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely. There was a similar moment like that for us where the one of the pigs was coming up to us and quite aggressively saying, we're just doing as we're told, we're just trying to get you off the road, da 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 da. And I says to him, oh, so you're just following orders, are you? And he said, no, I didn't say that. And he says, anyway, we're just trying to get, and it's just the cognitive dissonance or density you have to be a police officer in that scenario is just something that is beyond my comprehension. On the topic of intel gathering, police officers were going around with this, like home video, late 90s, early noughties style camera.
Yeah, that's the kind they have.
The ones that sort of flip out at the side with the little viewing window. Going round.
I wonder if they're more affordable. They get them in bulk on eBay.
Get them second hand.
Yeah.
They honest to God went up to me and started filming my feet, started filming my shoes.
They gotta pay you for that.
Yeah, my friend and I made that exact joke, and I don't know whether it was because they were done or because they were made so uncomfortable, but the second we made that joke, off they fucked instantly. It was,
Maybe you got them on their head, like, like maybe that was like like this cop was like,
exactly
finally time. plausible deniability.
But yeah, for the record, for those listening, like shoes are something that like where people wear different clothes to disguise their, to protect their identity. Often people only have one or two pairs of shoes at most, and so like fashion and police alike spend a lot of attention on people's shoes. And to be fair, like it's just a good OSINT tactic. Like it's also a way you can spot fash and infiltrators is like by their shoes, because shoes are harder to swap out than a t-shirt, like harder to keep a spare of that you only wear to protests.
The irony of that is, for me in particular, I won't go into too much detail, but those are shoes I do not wear out in public, so it was fucking pointless for them to do it anyway.
Then you absolutely nailed it. So your identity is protected in this interview, but you don't. So, but nonetheless, you still don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Have you personally had any training on de-arrest?
I have been. Yes, I have been in the proximity of that happening with activist groups in the past. I won't go into detail with whom.
Yeah, that's completely. I'm not expecting any of that. I'm just kind of curious about how you would gauge the people there, like how many people, like the people who were at the protest who were engaging in de-arresting people, like how much you think there were people who had explicit training versus how much people like caught on to the right things to do. Because in my experience, there's a lot of like underrated mob intuition, I guess I would call it, where people understand the thing to do very quickly and are able to copy each other fast. But I'm curious, in a case where a lot of people were successfully pulled back from the pigs, if other people there like had explicit training or have an inkling for that.
An absolute maximum of 5% of those who engaged in de-arrest activities had training, I would estimate. And it was incredible to see how quickly people caught on. The idea of grabbing on, locking on, do not let go, force the cops further into the crowd. It's amazing how quickly people caught onto that. And like you say, that mob mentality, oftentimes that phrase will be used to denigrate protesters. In this scenario, it's absolutely a term of strength, of endearment, of compliment to show how quickly they were, many of the protesters there were able to adapt to the situation, see what was going on, and aid their comrades. And there were 13 arrests, I believe, listed. Now, many of those happened after 3:00 as a result of the people being there for 3:00. They were specifically charged with breaching conditions imposed on the protest or whatever. But that means so few people actually got arrested during the protest, despite the near constant crossbow maneuvers and kettling and other police charges throughout that 2 to 2.5 hour period from when the more egregious violence began. I would estimate as high as 70 or 80% of attempted arrests completely failed as a result of comrades looking out for each other, sticking out for each other, fighting for our rights, fighting against the fascistic oppression imposed on us. And I think that it was very inspiring to see.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Lavender. This has been great to have you on and hear about your perspective from on the ground in the protest. I guess what we tend to ask guests on the show is if there are any orgs that you'd like to shout out, or just anything you'd like to use the platform to say before you go.
I don't want to shout out any specific orgs because, of course, they would be local to me, and that would be
sure,
identifying. But I do want to say thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to you guys for running these platforms, running these channels that are so important to spreading the word about revolution and leftist causes in general, and trans rights are human rights, etc., etc. Thank you for having me on, and
thanks for coming on.
Solidarity. Have an excellent evening. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on, Lavender.
Yeah, See you later.
So I just want to say as we wrap up this story that the vote to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist organization will be happening in the next couple of days. It might be tomorrow from when we are recording this. Current date is the 29th of June. It's either the Monday or Tuesday just after this. If you're hearing the podcast, it will have already happened. But yeah, if you're watching live, there's an opportunity here. If you're in the UK, I know you're all going to roll your eyes. Please don't quit the stream. Write to your MP and tell them that you find this move to prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist organization completely insane. It's worth saying, and it is just worth sending in a letter, because like even the most staunchly Zionist MP might get a bit rattled if a bunch of people, if thousands of people in their borough wrote into them saying we are not okay with this, they might get rattled at least. And that's something.
It's not about hoping that your MP will read your email, because it's extremely unlikely. It's like
you're not going to say the magic words that will fix their heart. This is not the point. It's hoping that either they're a bit undecided and they'll go, oh shit, I don't want to get hassle for my constituents, or you might scare a fash into not showing up for the vote, maybe. I don't know. It's still worth doing, and there are templates you can find online. Yeah.
And they will absolutely use this also as an opportunity. Like if they prescribe Palestine Action as a terrorist group, they will be able to associate things like the Palestinian flag with terrorism and things like that. So so
which they've already done to the Kurds.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even just like specifically about this org, but it's like this is, like they will use this as as leverage to continue criminalizing other kinds of dissent and everything like that. So plenty of reason to get out there and do something about it. Cool.
I've just before we do wrap up, I've remembered a story that we completely blanked on the notes. So Conrad, I'll get you a source for this. But there was a mass lobby. I just wanted to include this really quickly, tell you about it. There was a mass lobby of Parliament this week in the UK on behalf of trans people trying to fight back the new anti-trans legislation that's coming in. And basically what it is like a mass lobby means there's a place in Parliament where people can go into and like invoke a legal right to speak to their MP. And so people just queued like round the block, literally like in front of Big Ben, just like massive queue of people. Who was it? Kate Nash, the singer and actress, I think was actually there as well. Like a lot of people showed up. Some I knew, many I didn't. It was very cool. Some orgs I'm involved with, the coalition I'm involved with was, sending people along to it. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. And just like, I wanted to shout it out, I guess. It was like a cool action to put further pressure on the government to not try to kill us anymore. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So that's Red Planet. We don't have any homework for you this week. Write into the show and tell us your favorite police kettling maneuvers. We're going to do a tier list of like complete garbage tier police maneuvers that they should stop doing because they just don't work, up to like most effective, and then a solid breakdown of how you fight the most effective.
We'll unironically do that if you get us to £5,000 a month on Patreon or whatever.
That's exactly it. So Patreon, we're a show that's supported by our patrons over at patreon.com/red_planet. Unless we got the URL there. There are various different tiers you can read about if you go over there and check it out. The top one, however, is the sicko mode tier, who are supporters who really help the show, help make the show possible by supporting us so much. And the reward for it is a personalized thank you message on the end of every single show that looks like this. Thank you, Risk Inverse, for being our sicko. Please, people, check out the Patreon. It makes the show happen. It makes the show possible. It will keep the show going for a long time if you even went there and supported for like a couple bucks. But also it will help us to do things like the Zad documentary, which is now in the editing stage. And that's going to be fucking huge. And there's so much, honestly, like it's showing you all like a different world is possible because there are people living in it. We want to get this film made, and you can help make that possible and further future projects possible at our Patreon.com/red_planet. But where can people go to support Tim?
So you can find me on Twitch and YouTube as Conquest of Dread, or you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky as Dread Conquest. Yeah, I don't really stream that often outside of Red Planet stuff these days, but I have been working on a tabletop RPG that is about to get released. I know I say this every week, but check it out on Twitter, Dark RPG 2000, if you are into it. Yeah, it's in the last playtesting phase, but it's so close to being done. So but yeah, if you want to find out more about Mule, where could someone find out more about DJ Mule?
Well, someone could go to my Linktree, linktree.ee/DJ MUEL. I am currently back to streaming full time and making content. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. I've properly diversified my content since I've, recovered from my fatigue that's been plaguing me for the last couple of years. So I'm now doing like Instagram slide little things that are just like of a political nature. So go ahead and follow me on Instagram. You can see a couple of those. You could also follow me on Twitter. I'm back on Twitter, just like tweeting. I guess not many people who follow me are on Twitter, and that's probably why. I don't have like a huge reach on there, but I say some pretty funny things, so you'll probably like that. Also, shout out to Tim for the shout out earlier. Appreciate that. Appreciate the repost, bro. I'm on Blue Sky. But yeah, I'm making content on my main channel as well. I also have a new channel which is called Mule Twitch Clips, which is basically just like edited segments of my stream. I've got like 3 of those up at the moment, so please head over to that if you haven't already and check that out. Give the channel a sub, like on the videos, and comment. It helps them out in the algorithm. You know the score with that. And yeah, come to the stream. Come stop by the stream in the week, Monday to Thursday, 2 till 6 p.m. UK time. But that's my shout out done. Soph, where can people find more of you?
All my links are available at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. Most of all, you should go to my YouTube, where I have a new video out. It's about the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson. It's a great series of books, and it's about utopia and space and revolution and communism. And I think it's a really good video. As I said, it's a very pretty one, very high effort, probably the prettiest and highest effort video I've ever made. And that's mostly because I just like made it for me in a way. Like I just wanted to make something I'm really, really proud of about these books that I really, really love. I wouldn't hate if it got 1 million bajillion views, so please do send it to all your friends. And also check out my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. The video I mentioned earlier, they said on the TV you aren't a person anymore, will be up there early for my $2 plus patrons, as will my bigger project, The Mad and Mentally Ill, and future stuff like more Monster Men episodes, and something called Misinformation on the Internet. I got a lot of projects coming up, and you'll see them and hear updates about them if you join my Patreon, which again is patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. Right. I reckon that's us. And we're going to have a lovely friend on next week to chat about how silly everything is in America.
Okay.
Yay!
Woohoo.
Bye.
See you
See ya.
then.